What's up, everybody? Ryan Thomas here, live on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Now, as I told you, I bring you a great 2019 pre-draft show. The NFL Draft, in case you've been living under a rock, starts tonight at 8 o'clock on ESPN, NFL Network, and pretty much all over social media. And joining me on the show once again of Cover One Sports, none other than Greg Tompsett. Greg, what's going on, buddy? Good to have you on.
Thanks, man. Yeah, looking forward to it. We have made it through the long winter, and we are finally there and ready to bask in the sunshine of the draft.
Oh, I cannot agree more with that assessment as far as the weather goes. Right now in Buffalo, it is sunny. It's a beautiful day, believe it or not.
I've heard.
Yeah.
I've heard. It's nice. It's ready. I'm ready for it to come.
Hopefully that means that with the sunshine that the Bills make a great pick. And that'll lead to a sunny training camp and a sunny season.
Hopefully.
But yeah, Greg, I've really enjoyed a lot of the stuff you're doing for the listeners. Right off the top, you work with Cover One Sports, and you guys have been really hammering out show after show after show. I've been watching those on YouTube, and I've really enjoyed them.
No, thank you. It means a lot. We have an awesome team over there. There's a lot of guys who are real, true, scouts who, Eric went to the Scouting Academy and now, has kind of created Cover One, and with Russell Brown and Jordan and Christian Page and all the guys out there, there's some real hard-working scouts that are putting together 400 and 500 player, profiles and draft boards. Aaron and I have a lot of fun from a Bills standpoint and, kind of approach things from that area, but it's been a great team, a great group of guys, and we've really grown it into something fun. So we have a lot of fun with fans, and then you'll have great opportunities to jump on here with folks like yourself and be able to really talk about our beloved Bills.
Exactly, and that's really where my focus is, as I know that is where your focus is as well. But we got 8 picks leading up to Buffalo's pick. Buffalo picks 9th overall, obviously, barring any trade downs or anything, trade ups or anything like that. Right now, we can only go off of what we know, and what we know is that Buffalo picks 9th overall. And you got 8 teams picking ahead of Buffalo. For the draft, mock draft fanatics out there, what I'd like to do is kind of go down the line of picks 1 to 8, see what your thoughts are on what these teams could possibly do. And we'll first start off, obviously, with the team that holds the first overall pick in the 2019 NFL Draft. That's the Arizona Cardinals. Really a hot-button issue, as it always seems to be, that first overall pick. It's like a pesky story that just won't go away. No matter what draft, you're always wondering what that team will do. Will they pick someone or will they trade down? But in this case, the question has been, will Arizona take a quarterback in the first round for the second year in a row, mainly Kyler Murray? What is your take on all of this stuff with the Arizona Cardinals? And to start off, what do you think the Cardinals will do with that pick, or what should they do?
So the answer to those are very different in my mind. I've heard enough from plugged-in people, your Daniel Jeremiah, Peter Schrager, Adam Schefter, Todd McShay, that this is pretty much a done deal. They are going to take Kyler Murray, and that sounds like it's pretty much in stone. Now, I think that's crazy. The fact that last year they just drafted a top 10 quarterback. I think if I was building a team, the haul that you could get for the number 1 pick, like, say, from the Oakland Raiders, who are rumored to be interested in Murray, and you could potentially get 2 or even all 3 of those first-round picks from them, and then use that talent to surround Josh Rosen versus selling for probably 80 cents on the dollar for Josh Rosen and then using that to surround Kyler Murray. It just sounds crazy to me that they would go that route, but, it is what it is. It sounds like it's in stone and that's going to be the pick tonight. I certainly think or Nick Bosa are the best players in the draft, and that's who I would pick if I were them, or especially, like I said, you could trade down with Oakland, be at number 4, and still get one of Quinnen Williams, Josh Oliver, or Nick Bosa. That sounds like a slam dunk to me, but from everything I'm reading, it sounds like
Sounds like it's going to be Kyler Murray. It cut out a little bit there, but I basically got the gist on what you were saying. I think when I try to rationalize it and look at what they could do and all that stuff with the Cardinals, I have to try to rationalize it as why would Arizona go this route if they do go this route, because I think they're going to. So if it's kind of somewhat semi-concrete in my mind that they're going to take them, which it is in yours as well, because it's been widely reported that that's the direction that they're going to go in. The question is it all smoke screen? Is it all, fluff before the draft? We've seen stories like that, but I've just seen so much articles or reporting that states that this is the direction that they're going to go in. The question is why, and I wonder if all these fears about Josh Rosen's personality might be coming to light. What do you think about that?
I think it's fair to assume.
Right.
It's hard to know exactly why they're doing this, and the only reason I'm holding out any doubt that it's 99.9% in my mind is the fact that they haven't traded Rosen yet. And walking away this weekend with both Murray and Rosen still on your roster would be shocking to me. But the fact that they haven't done that deal yet, I still have a glimmer of doubt. But, like I said, I trust those guys who have reported it and assume that it's in stone. And then, the reason why, some of that stuff's got to come into play. It's a lack of confidence in Rosen, regardless of the reason why, how much is personality, how much is play, how much is fit in Kingsbury's system, all those different factors. I think that's debatable. But no matter what, if they traded up for him last year and now are ready to move on and pick another guy, it's an enormous lack of confidence, however you slice it.
Right, and the fact that they could wind up with Murray and Rosen on the roster at one time, rather than trading that, highly, everyone wants that first pick because you don't have to compete with anybody else. You don't have to wait for another team. It's literally the first pick. Everyone wants that first pick so they can guarantee that they'll get the guy that they want. And there's a lot of talent in this draft. And let's face it, the Arizona Cardinals are picking first overall for a reason. They are not a good football team. There's a lot of holes on that team, right?
Oh, not good is polite.
Yeah, not good is generous at best. But, we'll move on. I agree with you. I think Kyler Murray will be that first pick, and I think it's going to be a pick that's going to be talked about in the conversation as a what the heck was going on there pick for many years to come, to be quite honest.
Oh, yeah.
Next pick is the San Francisco 49ers. They finished the season last year 4-12, really in a strong rebuild, but really the reason why their season kind of went up in flames was because of the injury to Jimmy Garoppolo, and they've drafted a lot of defensive talent, but some of it hasn't panned out, some of it has. What direction do you think San Fran will go in with the second overall pick?
Yeah, I think that from a need standpoint, they could use a lot of areas. Again, they're at the top of the draft for a reason. Getting Garoppolo back is a huge buoy for them. I think it's an easy spot to be in. They can't go wrong. You pick who you like the best out of Bosa and Quinnen Williams, and you just go that route. Everything I've heard, it is Bosa, and that's the fit. They've invested in Eric Armstead, and I think a lot of people have seen Solomon Thomas's name kicked around there, but they traded for D Ford from Kansas City. You put D Ford opposite Bosa, I think you got something really special.
Yeah, and you always forget about the trades that are made. D Ford and the Frank Clark trade. I think those are two trades that actually have a major impact on the first round because they pertain to teams that have multiple first round picks. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong here, but I can't remember a time where there were so many teams that had multiple first round picks in one draft.
It is crazy now with all the trades. You have 4 or 5 teams with no first-round pick and 4 or 5 teams with multiple, including Oakland and 3. It is very interesting. It's certainly not anything I recall in the recent past. You always have 1 or 2 teams, but having 5 teams with multiple and 5 teams with none is crazy.
Right. The rival, I think, the future rival of the current rival, but I think really the long-term rival of the Buffalo Bills, the New York Jets, with the Josh Allen versus Sam Darnold storyline that'll be hovering over each and every one of those games that's played probably for the next 10 to 15 years. The New York Jets pick 3rd overall. Definitely have a lot of needs, but they've definitely had an offseason where they have added pieces around Sam Darnold on offense, and they got C.J. Mosley on defense. 3rd overall, though, what does Gang Green do to make this team better?
I can't even describe how frustrated I am at how good of a position they're in.
Right.
Whether they just sit there and take who's left, which looks like it's going to be Quinnen Williams, or they decide Ed Oliver's the guy for them, or they get some ridiculous bounty from a dumb team like the Redskins to trade down, and they get some huge bounty of picks to rebuild. I am just crossing my fingers and desperately hoping that Mike McCagnon figures out a way to mess this up.
Right.
And that he reaches for Rashawn Gary or DK Metcalf, or he makes a bad trade where he doesn't get a good haul. But I think for Bills fans, it's going to be tough for them to mess this up. And if I'm them, I sprint to the podium with the card that says Quinnen Williams, because I think he's the best player on the draft.
I would agree with that 100%. I mean, really, a lot of people say Bosa or Quinnen Williams, but most importantly, you got to look at with Bosa compared to Williams. Bosa will already be gone in this case, and I think that would be a luxury, as you said, sprinting to the podium for the Jets to take Quinnen Williams, because he's a guy that I think is just a good guy. You know, I watched that feature on him that Hyundai did where it talked about how his mom passed away from cancer when he was very young, and he took the reins of being the man of the house and taking care of his sister. And then you watch him on the football field, and you're like, this guy is he's just a machine out there. So I would hate him on the New York Jets because I like him. I don't want to like a player that plays on the New York Jets.
But no, I agree completely. And I used the analogy before, is that Quinnen Williams is what Ndamukong Suh could have been if he was just a better guy.
Right. I definitely agree. I definitely see him being a player that is a cornerstone on a defensive line for a long time. And I see him as a guy that doesn't have, let's just throw this out there too, there's kind of like this perception now of Alabama defensive linemen that maybe once they get the money, they kind of disappear, and we know a guy that did that very well, that Marcel Darius guy. I don't think that's Quinnen Williams, right?
That's actually another analogy I've used, is I said that, the combination of if Ndamukong Suh wasn't a jerk, or if Marcel Darius had a great work ethic and was continuing to try to get better, that's what Quinnen Williams is.
Right. Yeah, that'd be a great pick for the Jets, and they're really in a great spot to do really whatever they want. If this falls the way that it does, they could either take Quinnen Williams or they could trade down, and hopefully there is a team that makes a stupid move, or hopefully they're the team that makes the stupid move, that they don't get a lot of good picks in return for next year or beyond. 4th overall, you have one of the most polarizing teams right now, I think, in the National Football League as far as day-to-day conversation. I have a friend out there that's a really huge Raiders fan. He has no idea what the hell's going on with this franchise, and he's just as dialed in as anyone with the Raiders. I don't know what to... This is a huge mystery, what they're going to do in this draft. They've kept things pretty tight-lipped, but 4th overall... As of now, we got Kyler Murray, we got Nick Bosa, and we have Quinnen Williams going 3rd to the Jets. 4th overall, do you have any idea what the Raiders will do with this pick?
I'd love to lie to you and tell you that I do, but my favorite analogy for them, one of my favorite podcasts, Bill Simmons, always talks about the Mike Tyson zone, and that John Gruden and the Raiders are in the Mike Tyson zone, meaning that you could hear a report tomorrow morning, and that if you woke up and said, hey, yesterday Mike Tyson fought a grizzly bear and knocked him out, it would take you a second to realize if that was real or not. And the Raiders are in that Mike Tyson zone where you could tell me a list of 15 different players, and I'd be like, yeah, that might be true. I could see that. So everything I'm hearing is, I think Mike Mayock wants to really stockpile picks and pay a bunch of guys to rebuild this roster, and they're rumored to be the team that Washington or Cincinnati is moving up to get Dwayne Haskins for. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think I could definitely see that. If they stay, I think Josh Allen, the edge rusher out of Kentucky, is the most logical pick there. Gruden kept talking about their need for pass rush and to be able to basically replace Khalil Mack. So if they stay, that would be my guess, is Josh Allen. But right now, if I were to make a pick in this mock here, I would say they trade out of this pick and end up having someone trade in here to select Dwayne Haskins.
That's very interesting because I have not heard much. I have heard things about them possibly trading out of the pick, but I didn't hear anything about who they were trading the pick with, and that would definitely be a Mike Mayock-esque move to say, hey, John, I'm the GM, let me do my thing. And I talked about how the Arizona Cardinals have a lot of needs. The Oakland Raiders, that defense is one of the worst in the National Football League. They had 13 sacks last season as a team, whereas Khalil Mack had 12 and a half. So that just goes to show you that this defense is very bad. It would take more than one guy to make this defense great again, right?
Yeah, and I'll say my one caveat to that would be if a team trades up with the Jets at 3 to go up and get a quarterback, and then one of Bosa or Quinnen Williams fell to 4, I do think they are enough of an elite talent that they might sit there at 4 and just take him.
Right.
If it gets past there, I think there's a little bit of a tear break after those two, where then it's debatable of who you think the next guy is with your Devin White, your Ed Oliver, your Josh Allen, that next group.
Right.
That I could see that being the difference of whether they trade down or not. But right here, I'll project that they do trade down and someone comes up to snag Dwayne Haskins.
I definitely agree with that because I think the consensus to me, as far as everyone that I've talked to, is that Bosa and Williams are the two best players in this draft overall. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Number 5 overall, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 5-11, a new head coach in Bruce Arians, who's looking to somewhat restore order in the city of Tampa Bay and bring some respectability back to these Buccaneers. Man, there are few teams, in my opinion, that have underachieved more than the Bucs. Would that be a fair assessment?
Very, very accurate. I think they've been the darlings like 2 or 3 years in a row and just keep falling flat on their face. A lot of people had them as a sleeper the last consecutive years, and they just keep falling flat on their face. I think that with Quan Alexander, the linebacker, leaving to go to San Francisco, I think this really lines up perfectly for them to snag Devin White out of LSU as the future leader of that defense. And that seems to be the mock pick in almost every mock draft for them. So I think that it's pretty likely that Devin White here at pick 5 is the pick, and that I think they do it running away.
The one scenario that kind of looms over the heads of the Bucs is that Gerald McCoy, the All-Pro defensive tackle, could possibly be traded tonight on draft night. I've read a lot of stuff about that, and it's kind of been a storyline that's been kind of put in the rearview mirror as we talk about prospects and stuff. But I always kind of try to stay focused on what NFL players now could possibly be traded, and Gerald McCoy is one of them. You think Devin White will go 5th overall? I think that's very likely. I'd say that Devin White is a phenomenal player, and he is a cornerstone-type linebacker for a defense, especially one that really needs one like Tampa Bay does. But if you trade Gerald McCoy because you can't re-sign him and he wants too much money or whatever, for whatever reason there might be, do you think they maybe could go with Ed Oliver here at 5th overall? Do you think that's a possibility?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, I think that's the debate they're going to have internally, and it's going to depend on whether they have that deal in place. I actually would love for the Bills to be the team that they look to trade a mid-round pick for Gerald McCoy. I think that Gerald McCoy is available purely for financial reasons. Mm-hmm. I think he's still a good player. He's just 31 years old, and they owe him $13 million, and that's a lot of money, and I believe they almost are at a point where they almost can't sign all their draft picks. They're so tied up against the cap.
Right.
So I think if the Bills could pounce on that with the later fourth-round pick or one of their fifth-round picks to get him, we can eat that $13 million easily. He's only there for the 1 year to be able to do that. We could work out a 2 or 3 year deal if we wanted, but we could just let it ride out for the 1 year and then figure it out. And if they already had that deal in place, I think they could look to take Oliver. I think their challenge is going to be timing that the teams who would want to trade for McCoy also might want Ed Oliver or Quinnen Williams or Jeffrey Simmons or Christian Wilkins or whoever, and they may not be ready to do that deal until Friday or even Saturday. So I think it's going to be a gut call by the team there in Tampa Bay and their leadership trying to figure out who is really the top guy on their board. So I have Oliver higher than White, and I would take Oliver, but everything I've read tells me they're going to take Devin White.
Right. And that's the thing. You have a big board, and then you have a mock draft. They're two very different things, right?
Yep.
Two very different things. So.
And I think it's important for fans to know, I think they would be shocked how wide-ranging the 32 different big boards are of all the different teams and just how much variance there is. That some guys might be 7th on one board and 40th on another.
Right.
I think fans would be shocked at how big of a gap there is from one team to another.
And I think a lot of it has to do with scheme, too. Like, in terms of Buffalo, you talk about how they need like a 3-technique defensive tackle or a guy that can be that cog in the defensive line like a Kyle Williams was. And those are hard to find, and that's why I think maybe Tampa Bay could take one like Ed Oliver possibly there. But I do think Devin White is more possible given that, the departure of Quan Alexander and needing that type of linebacker on that team. 6th overall, the New York Giants. What an offseason it's been for them. I also know quite a lot of Giants fans. Unfortunately, they do live in the Buffalo area for some reason. But they have had a very interesting offseason. Really, right now, I think the only guy that they could use as the poster boy is Saquon Barkley. No more Landon Collins, no more Odell Beckham, and Eli Manning is a shell of his former shell self, I guess we could say. So I've never really thought Eli was that great. He just had a lot of clutch moments and all that, but that's another story for another day. But 6th overall, you gotta imagine that the Giants take a quarterback here, or do they? Or don't they?
I think it's tough. I've heard some people I really trust say that Daniel Jones is absolutely in play at this pick. As a Bills fan, I desperately want that to be true.
Right.
I don't think Daniel Jones is even a first-round pick, period.
I don't either.
But if he could go top 6 in front of the Bills, that would be a Christmas gift in itself. I think realistically that this is probably, I think Daniel Jones is in play. If they get nervous about not being able to wait till 17 to get him, I think he's in play. I've heard Montez Sweat, his name linked to them several times.
Wow.
I also think you start to get into some of the offensive tackle discussion here where protecting Saquon and Eli Manning or their future quarterback that they might pick next year, I think that Jonah Williams and Andre Dillard and Jawan Taylor come into play here. Right now, from everything I've read, I think Daniel Jones is a real possibility here. So I don't think that's crazy, but I think it's crazy myself, but I won't be shocked if it happens tonight.
I think that would be the reach of the draft. Wouldn't you say?
Oh, easily.
Easily.
I think it's crazy, but there's enough smart people linking it to their
Right.
I think in this scenario, if you see Haskins traded up for at 4, and the nervousness with that many teams that you start to get into Denver, Cincinnati, Miami, Washington, all before them at 17, they may not think he makes it there, and they may just say, "Hey, we can't afford the risk. We're taking our." So right now, that's what I think is possible.
I think that's likely. It's funny because I did my top 5 rankings at every position, as you saw, and my quarterback, I had Drew Lock as my number 1 quarterback. I feel like he's the most polished, best passer, has a really strong arm, is a guy that kind of reminds me of Josh Allen a little bit, to be quite honest, in terms of his arm strength.
Yeah, there's some similarities there.
Real similarities, and I thought to myself, if the Giants don't get Dwayne Haskins, which according to this, I don't, according to what we're talking about now, that they won't, and they take Daniel Jones instead of Drew Lock, I think the Cincinnati Bengals potentially at 11 could really grin ear to ear and end up trading into this top 10 and getting Drew Lock. Do you think that's possible?
I've got something Drew Lock related coming.
Okay, all right. I'll let you get to it. So 7th overall, a team that I'm not a fan of. I just don't like the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that they did beat our Buffalo Bills in the playoffs in one of the worst football games I've ever watched. One of the most boring games ever. And I cannot stand Doug Marrone. I'm still salty over Doug Marrone. I just can't stand him. But 7th overall, Jacksonville gets one of my favorite quarterback stories of all time in Nick Foles. And I'd like to think that they get him a weapon or they get him some protection. What say you on that? 7th overall.
I think that's absolutely where they're looking here. I think that they're going to be in some combination of. I don't think DK Metcalf is likely here, but I think his name gets discussed. I think TJ Hawkinson is in play here.
Right.
But I really think it comes down to protecting Foles, and that they're going to be debating Jawan Taylor and Jonah Williams. Everything I've read links them to Jawan Taylor. I think Jonah Williams is the better player, but everything I've seen is that they really love Jawan Taylor, how violent his hands are, what a talented guy that he is, and that they can plug him in at right tackle for a long time. So right now, that's what I would guess is that they go to protect go to protect Foles and have a run grader, kind of run blocker who can open up holes for Leonard Fournette, and that they would go with Jawan Taylor at number 7.
I completely agree, and I hope you're right because my guy's still out there. We'll get to that. 8th overall, 8th overall, Detroit Lions. You have second-year head coach Matt Patricia, pencil in his ear, hat on backwards. Maybe he'll be, cleanly shaven this year. Maybe he'll get a haircut, one of the two, or both, preferably both. But neither here nor there. 8th overall, the Detroit Lions have a fair share of needs. Where do you see them going in the draft?
So there's good news and bad news for the Bills here. I think there's several players left with only 2 spots away that they're going to be okay either way. The bad news is I think that a lot of the Lions' needs align with the Bills. I also think the Lions are trying desperately, just like the Bills, to trade down, and that they may be looking to move out of this pick. And I feel frustrated that I think the guy that I really want for the Bills is going to end up getting close, but end up unfortunately being 1 pick away, and that either the Lions would take Ed Oliver, or that at this spot the Atlanta Falcons would come up from 14 to 8, and they would take Ed Oliver. And my fear is that Ed Oliver is going to get really close to us, but go 1 pick before us. And I would actually project the Falcons trading up from 14 to 8 to take Ed Oliver here right in front of the Bills.
Wow! I didn't see that coming. You had me kind of shocked. I mean, I see it. I definitely agree that Ed Oliver is one of those players that is too good to go into the last 2 picks of the top 10. I think he's a top 8 player in this draft. I think he might be even better than that as far as overall, big board wise. I think he's probably somewhere inside my top 5 or 6. And there's a lot of reasons to like Ed Oliver. We talked about it, your first appearance on the show, that this guy might be, quote unquote, not necessarily undersized, but I see him as underweight for his position. Would that be fair assessment?
He's not a perfect prospect by any means, but I think he's so disruptive and athletic that he's going to translate to the NFL. Very similar to like a Geno Atkins.
Right, and it's not about whether he gets sacks. I don't really need my defensive tackle to have double-digit sacks every single year. As long as he's the disruptor on the defensive line, the guy that's kind of pushing the pile, that's what Ed Oliver does best. He creates pressure and and really opens things up for that entire defense. At least he did at Ole Miss. It'd be interesting to see him in a Lions uniform. Which brings us to the 4-time AFC champion Buffalo Bills as we pick 9th overall. Very pumped up about this draft, and I'm very pumped up that I'll just say it right here. If this draft plays out the way that it has played out for us, would I be a little bit salty that Ed Oliver was picked by the Detroit Lions? Yeah, I would. I like Ed Oliver. I think he would fit in here real well. But my boy is still there. The guy that's number 2 on my top 5 Bills big board is T.J. Hawkinson, tight end out of Iowa. What do you think?
I think Hawkinson is 100% in play here. I think it would come down to a couple scenarios, and I gave a little hint earlier about something I think could play out. Right here, I think the internal debate with Buffalo is Jonah Williams versus T.J. Hawkinson. Mm-hmm. Some people like Andre Dillard. Some people like, maybe a Brian Burns. Christian Wilkins' name might come up. DK Metcalf's name might come up. I think it really comes down to two guys who are very good process fits, long-term values, big adds to the team, and that's Jonah Williams and T.J. Hawkinson. I think they could easily turn either of those cards in and be really happy. I personally have Jonah Williams a slight notch ahead, but I would be completely happy with either one. I think this scenario is interesting because there's only one first-round quarterback left. Drew Lock has been connected to Denver several times, and I think there's a strong possibility that Brandon Beane could leverage this pick for a team like Cincinnati to say, hey, you could jump up here ahead of Denver and get the quarterback you need. We can just slide down 2 spots, and you still get either Jonah Williams or T.J. Hawkinson no matter what. And I think that's a kind of play that Beane could use to get an extra, maybe they get a 3rd and a 4th round pick from Cincinnati to slide down and pick the guy they were going to pick anyways by letting them come up and get Drew Lock. So I think you could see something like that. I think that if Drew Lock is not there, Denver is very connected to Devin Bush. So I think they can feel fairly comfortable that they can still have their guy. And that's the kind of wizard pick that I think Brandon Beane pulls off sometimes. So I think it's possible they could maybe even trade down to 11, pick up some extra assets, and still get T.J. Hawkinson.
Wow, that would be phenomenal. If that happened, man, I would send you like a gift in the mail for calling that. I want T.J. Hawkinson so bad. Ed Oliver is a guy that I've really wanted from the get-go, but it's become clear to me that might not happen. And we don't.
He's rumored to the Jets at number 3 if they stay there. I think it's crazy to take him over Quinnen Williams, even though I love Oliver.
Right.
But that's being rumored out there right now.
All right. Yeah, I definitely could see that. I would love to see T.J. Hawkinson due to the fact that he just would create a whole new dimension to this offense that they haven't had in a long time. If really, I guess Pete Metzelaars, but not in my lifetime. And I turned 27 on the 30th of this month, Greg. 27, and they haven't had a tight end.
The Bills have never had an elite tight end.
Right.
We remember some of the guys fondly, like Keith McKellar and
Jay Reamersma.
But I want to say the best season for any Bills tight end ever is like 500 or 600 yards.
Right. I think you're right on the money there.
They've never had an elite tight end, or I don't believe they've ever had a tight end make the Pro Bowl in their history.
And this guy, they say to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I think T.J. Hawkinson actually kills 3 birds with 1 stone because he helps their offensive line because he can block. He helps their passing game because he can run routes and line up anywhere on the field and catch pretty well. And most of all, last but not least, he would be the best friend of Josh Allen on the field and probably off of it. Right?
No, I think he has so much value. He is a hellacious run blocker and really takes a lot of passion in just mauling guys in the run blocking. I think he's an elite athlete, has great hands, very versatile, doesn't tip your hand from a Brian Dable standpoint about whether you're running or passing and the value he has in the play action game. He's a versatile weapon and would be a real asset to the team. I'd be ecstatic if they walked away with him.
I think those jerseys would fly off the shelves, Greg. I really do. I know Buffalo. You know Buffalo. We know Buffalo very well, and that would be a pick that I think a lot of Bills fans would. It would be nice to settle for T.J. Hockenson. I don't even want to even say that because I don't look at it as settling. I look at him as one of the best players in this draft as well. You know, a lot of talent in the teens of this draft. I think ultimately the guys that are picked in the teens from 11 to 19 are very good. This is a very interesting draft. But, Greg, I really appreciate you coming on the show today, and I look forward to recapping the draft with you in the near future.
Absolutely. Like I said, we've struggled through the long winter here. We've gone through 1,000 mock drafts, everybody's projections, all the rumors, and tonight we finally get to see the real deal. So I'm ecstatic. I can't wait to see how everything shakes out. I think no matter what, the Bills are going to have a good night, and we're going to walk away with one or maybe even two good players tonight. I think it's a possibility. You could see the Bills sneak back up into the late first and be able to snag a guy. If you see someone that they've been connected to start to fall, like an Andre Dillard, like a Noah Fant, like a Christian Wilkins, like a DK Metcalf, I think you could see them walk away with two assets tonight if it falls right.
If they walked away with Hockenson and Metcalf like in the 20s or 30s, I'd probably faint. That's a safe assessment.
Yeah, I think I saw one earlier from a legitimate source who had them walking away with Ed Oliver and trading back up for Noah Fant later on.
That'd be great, too.
That's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
Well, Greg, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. Let's go Buffalo. Draft night. Enjoy it, buddy.
Appreciate it. Love all the work you do. Really excited about where Thomas Takes is going, and I think you have a bright future ahead of you.
Thank you, buddy. I really appreciate that. Take care, man. Have a good night.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. So that was Greg Tompsett of Cover One Sports, the first edition, first half hour, I should say, of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, Buffalo Bills pre-draft show. We lined it up 1 through 9, and he laid out a lot of different scenarios as far as what could be next for the Buffalo Bills. What could be next for the remaining teams that are kind of floating around Buffalo. Buffalo could maybe trade back. Buffalo could maybe go in a lot of different directions. And I agree. 9th, they're in a very good spot in this draft, in this particular draft, with certain situations that other teams have to trade down. We'll be right back. Jake Watkins will be joining me on the show from TrainwreckSports.com. Stay tuned.